from Section 204. Heavy Hockey Podcast with Michael and Guess. Heavy hockey isn't dead. It's just getting started.
Hey, it's Michael here from the Heavy Hockey Podcast. I've got two guests tonight at the end of, not quite the end of Game 2, but Game 2 was last night, but we're going to talk about Game 2. I have got Dan from Oilers Nation and HockeyFights.com and Hart from Puckpedia with me tonight. Thanks for joining, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, gentlemen, we got the right result, Game 2. A little bit of nerves, I'm sure, for most hockey fans. I don't know about you guys, but let's start by talking. Just getting an idea. Maybe Hart, I'll start with you. Get an idea of what you thought about the game and kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, I thought that they certainly had a lot more push going offensively. Like the first game, they seemed like they were on their heels the whole time, and so they had a lot more offensive zone time. They carried the play more. Even though they were shorthanded a lot of the time, it didn't kill the momentum. Once they got back to even strength, they were continuing to kind of push the puck into the Hawk zone and create scoring chances. And I think we saw in both games that Blackhawks are pretty poor defensively, especially their D-man, other than Duncan Keith. So when they keep putting pressure on them and kind of getting their off the rush game going and some cycling, the Hawks can't really keep up. So I think for the Oilers, it just shows it's all about how they play defensively. They cleaned up a lot of some of the defensive mistakes. They still made some, but they could score enough. So it was definitely a big improvement.
Yeah, they definitely outscored some of their defensive mistakes last night. Dan, your thoughts? Good, bad, ugly.
Yeah, I mean, Hart's a pretty smart guy. He puts it pretty succinctly. It's I don't know how much more I can add. Just saying that, kind of alluding to the point there that Hart made about our defensive lapses. He still had 2-3 breakaways in the opening period. Or in the opening 2, I guess it was. Kane getting 2 of those. That's you're still playing with fire a little bit when it comes to Chicago's firepower, and I think that's kind of why we were sitting on the edge of our seats as fans watching the game to start the thing. But once that kind of settled down, and then they got those 2 goals about halfway through the third period, it just kind of you got to exhale a little bit, and it felt like the team kind of was just like, okay, this is where we're supposed to be, and this is the level of effort we need to show, because it didn't exist in the first game. You see the results of an actual consistent effort throughout the game.
Yeah, I think both you guys kind of hit it on the head. I mean, we had it was really good offensive effort. I'm not convinced that we did a ton better defensively, but certainly, it's not like the Oilers are known for their stalwart defense anyway, right? If we can get the kind of effort that we got last night, then I think that's good. Is there, when we look at the defense, though, guys, and I'm going to put a little bit of a jump ball here. Who do you think's been our number one guy so far through 2? And who would you say needs some improvement?
I can go. I would say Bear. By far and away the best guy. The first game, there was a low standard, but I thought he had the best moments and moved the puck out as best as he could. And I thought last night he was by far the best at skating the puck, when there was some trouble in his own end, like he always does, either taking those couple strides, or he seems to be so good at those little short passes that just kind of clear things up. I thought by far he was the best. And I would say both games better last night, but both games Larson has struggled the most. He's never been great skating with the puck, but he's been kind of getting beat in the corners a little bit. He just seems like he doesn't have his conditioning up or his speed up. He's getting kind of turned a few times. He's not moving with the play fast enough, and he doesn't seem to have that nastiness along the boards too, which sometimes I think would give him some extra space and time. So that would be my kind of winner and loser from the D group.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. And even just to say, when a guy like Matt Benning is out physicaling Adam Larson, you kind of expect more from a Larson type on that aspect of the game. Darnell had a really, really nice setup on that Connor McDavid goal. Like, I mean, Connor, of course, being alone is a Chicago lapse in and of itself, but for him to feed that past him, it was unreal. But I do think that, the old adage of if you don't think of a defenseman's name or number, it's probably because they've had an okay game. And I think that's very consistent with what Hart was saying about Ethan Bear. It's kind of been like he's not noticeable in the sense that, like, you're not ragging on him for getting beat, but you definitely felt that way with Larson. There's been a couple times where he just, I puckered up because I thought, oh, good, we're going to get another call here, or he's going to get beat around the corner. It's just, hopefully he gets his sea legs under him sooner rather than later, because we need just consistent play throughout, and you're not getting it from him.
Yeah, I mean, geez, this is going to be a boring episode. No arguments here at all whatsoever. Although I'm a little bit of a toss-up on whether I think Nurse or Bear has been our best guy on D. I can be critical of Nurse a lot of times, but I think he's kind of played the game that you expect from him, and maybe that doesn't make him the best D man on the team, but it makes him maybe the most consistent guy so far. And I've really, I've kind of liked that about him through two. But Larson, I've had a real problem watching him play. His reads have been poor on the defensive side, and he just hasn't been, typically, and everybody knows the word on Larson is in the corner. He's awful to deal with. You talk to players that have played against him, you talk to anybody, and that's kind of where Larson shines, and he hasn't even done that. And it's hard to say. I've been trying to think about it, and I don't follow Larson closely enough as a player. It's odd to say, but it's maybe a slow starter. I don't know. I mean, he's been awful through a couple of games, in my opinion. And the other guy that I would expect more from, he's just not been awful, but the guy I'd expect more from is Clefbaum. You hope that he's like that line pairing or D pairing. I mean, for your first D pairing, you hope that they are noticeable, but in a good way. And you're right about the guys on that second pairing. If you're not yelling their name every time they're out there, then they're doing their job. Same goes for the third pairing. But the first guys, they should be making everybody's life hell, or at least getting the puck out and leading to some good rushes for the offense.
Well, I'd ask you though, are Larson and Clefbaum the top pair? Like, because Bear and Nurse played more minutes last game. Right?
Yeah.
And they play with Connor's line. Like, I think we might have a new top pairing D pair. Like, I just don't think that Clefbaum and Larson, the way the coach uses them, and the minutes now you're seeing, I think it might have shifted, especially even strength. I mean, Clefbaum gets all the power play minutes, and Larson gets a lot of the penalty kill minutes, but even strength, I mean, it seems like Bear and Nurse are the top pairing.
Well, I think too, like you kind of touched on it there too, Mike. Like with Larson and all these guys, the coach has to kind of identify, the slow starters versus the guys that are ready to go, and the guys that came into camp hungry and ready and fired up. The team, I think, as a whole, showed that they weren't at the level that they needed to be in game one. Obviously, Connor put the team on his back and lit the fire for game two. But I hope, and I think Hart's completely right that there's been a shift on defense. I just hope that we can get the same kind of level of Larson and Clefbaum that we've had in the past, because then you look at us as a contender instead of just trying to get through this qualifier round by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit that right on the head. I think the one good thing that you can take from this is we can sit here and we can talk about a game too that we came out and we, it got a better showing from the team. But I think we can, look at this team and say there's a lot more for them to give than what we've seen, and to me, that's the positive. I think we've seen the best from Chicago. Like they've got, they've been suspect on D all season, and everybody knows the firepower and the leadership that Taves brings, and Kane on in terms of offense, but defense, and then Crawford. I mean, he, you kind of, if you're a Hawks fan, I think you hope that he just plays lights out, and he hasn't been awful, but he hasn't been exceptional either. So. I think that's kind of a good thing for Edmonton. What do you guys think? When we're looking at this, is Draisaitl off, or is there something, or is it just he hasn't had the shot yet, or what's going on there?
Oh, I think that he hasn't shown his MVP status yet. I think that you still give credit to the Chicago Blackhawks because they're like any team that plays the Oilers in the playoffs. You're going to have to try and game plan for both Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I think they've just effectively kind of got him down, but also he has, he doesn't have the same kind of the finish that you kind of come to expect with him, especially with his MVP caliber season. I just think that there's credit to be given on both sides, right? It's Leon has to be better and can be better and will be better, all things willing. But also the Blackhawks, just have played him tighter, and some of the results have shown from it. He gets in the regular season he was getting a lot of time and space on the power play. He doesn't seem to be getting that right now. They're real tight on him, and they've kind of let Connor, run the show when it comes to the power play.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you put the first two games on for someone that didn't watch the whole season and say, who do you think led the league in scoring and is probably win the MVP, he'd be like the fifth or sixth guess, right? Like, he hasn't stood out. And he's maybe similar to Larson. He doesn't seem like he's skating at the same pace as he did early in the year. Although, like, the first game, they all seemed like they were skating in mud. So maybe we'll give him a pass. But yeah, the last game, he didn't quite seemed like he had the step. But I guess I'll say, on the other side, though, in the first game, like, his line was one of the only lines that seemed to have a couple shifts with some sustained pressure and cycling and a few, not great scoring chances, but at least they had the puck in the other end. And same last night, like they had some zone time when they were moving it around, but he didn't really have like those big scoring chances, and he didn't take the puck to the net and put a guy on his hip and like drag him to the net like we've seen him do. So yeah, I think maybe a bigger guy like that, it's going to take a little bit to get his legs going. But that's the great thing about having Draisaitl and Connor, like players at that level, and then also on two different lines, is you really don't need, especially against Chicago, like you don't need both of them at their 100% level any game. If you have one at that level and one okay, that should be enough to win. So maybe next game it'll reverse. But I agree, certainly haven't seen Draisaitl's regular season form yet.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. There's one of the things, like last game, watching Draisaitl, his, I love watching this guy pass, like, through the slot and all the way across and hit somebody tape to tape. And he was just a bit behind on some of those passes that would be, easy assists for him in a typical game. So some of it, and some of it I wonder is, just sort of gelling with the team again after, such a long break and getting into, the speed of an actual NHL game. I didn't talk about this after the first game, and it just comes to mind as I say that. What do you guys, and maybe Dan, I'll start with you. What have you thought about the play so far? Have you, a lot like it sounds like the players have settled into not having fans in the stands. Have you, as a fan or a spectator, settled into not having fans in the stands?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think we all felt it one way or another at some point during this bubble hockey, that it's like an oh shit moment. Like, this is very different than what we know and expect. I don't think anything's been that out of place. The throwing the hats on the ice thing, like in the moment you're like, oh, that's kind of a neat idea, but then afterwards you hear Connor McDavid talk about it, and it's like, yeah, I get that too. It's the little things that they try to do that I appreciate. I think it's neat to watch them try and make the best of a shitty situation. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this one.
Yeah.
But so it's you get it, you appreciate that they're trying it, but at the same time it's like, okay, come on, like let's just play the game and let it be what it is. But I think it's also good, and it's been interesting to see the players, speaking selfishly from a hockeyfights.com perspective, seeing the players using something like fighting to get the energy into the game and get some of that hate going in some of the series. Like, I know I haven't actually been able to watch the Islanders and the Panthers yet, but I've heard that that's been pretty dry toast. Overall, they did have a fight in that one, but yeah, it's cool to see the players get intense and get excited. But it is weird. It is always going to just be different as a fan.
I found, like, especially the Oilers Chicago series, like this. They played pretty slow. Like, the players don't seem like they're skating at their full kind of mid-season or playoff level. And I would, times you see some of the intensity, but it's not like the normal playoff game where the crowd's roaring and the guys are flying into the boards to hit each other, and you could just see the intensity kind of ratchet up every moment. And I think the crowd probably does have something to do with that, and the fact that they haven't played hockey in so long. But maybe as time goes on, as they get kind of their game shape back, and the stakes are higher, we'll see some of it. But yeah, especially in the Oiler Blackhawks series, like, there hasn't really been any nastiness or anything, and it doesn't seem quite the same. And you do wonder if some of that has to do with the crowd, where even if the same level of conditioning, if the crowd was there, if that kind of adrenaline from them roaring would get the players going and bring some of that on. But the emotions have seemed pretty well in check. I mean, the Oilers took a bunch of penalties, but they were all just like, they weren't like roughing or getting too aggressive. They were just like hooks and holds and slashes. So it would be interesting to see how, as the playoffs go on and the stakes get higher and maybe the teams are better, what the intensity level is like, and the speed of the game as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would have said, if I hadn't had an interview about a couple weeks ago with George Laraque, I might have said otherwise. I might have said, it seems like regular hockey to me. But we had George Laraque on one of my live streams a few weeks back, and he started talking about how the energy of the fans, of course, that was, at the old Rexall. But he said that the dressing room was shaking, right? Like, that they knew going into the finals, like, they knew the fans were there, and it was a big part of the energy of the team, right? And so, like, I've played hockey in front of, a few thousand fans before, and I can tell you, like, there's a certain amount of adrenaline that brings to you, that I just don't know if you can, replicate. But I think they've done a good job. I think, to your point, Dan, I mean, in a bad situation, they've done a great job. I think out of all of the sports that I've been able to watch, I think the NHL has maybe done the best job. I'm kind of curious because, Dan, you were saying you were covering WNBA?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are they doing for?
They're just in a bubble. They're and I mean, the nice thing for basketball and for hockey too is that you're able to contain yourself within an arena, right? And so they have, I don't know exactly where they are right now, to be honest with you, as I start talking about it. But I have seen pictures and video from within, they're calling it WNBA Court 1 and WNBA Court 2. So they've got some kind of facility somewhere where they're set up. The players are all quarantined, and they're just going to play out the season like this. It's just, when you're indoors, the ability to kind of shelter yourself is a way easier proposition than as we're seeing right now with the MLB. It's, and then a smaller league like that, of course, you've got, it actually probably saves them some cash on travel and stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, it's just, for me, it's like anything that they do, it's, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Yeah.
But it's, you admire them for trying instead of just throwing their hands up in the air and having us sit in front of a 16,000 seat stadium with cardboard cutouts of the seats. Right. Like, it's just, they're trying to do new stuff. And I think that they're going to fine tune it during this qualifier round. And I think it's even more crazy when the playoffs come around.
Yeah. No, they're continuously changing what they're doing. I mean, we don't see all the little nuances behind the scenes, but I was listening to, I wish I remembered his name, but one of the gentlemen from the league was on Sirius Radio talking about all the different things that they were doing and trying during exhibition. And he said, that they would continue to develop, how they go about this throughout the playoffs. My hat's off to the league. They're doing a great job. Guys, we are almost 22 minutes in, and we have not talked about Connor McDavid. we have not even mentioned that Connor McDavid got a hat trick last night. Hart, I mean, tell me your thoughts on this. Do you think he hears what's going on? I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but do you think he hears personality deficient? Do you think he hears any of that? Let's talk Connor. I mean, 22 minutes in, and we're missing arguably the best player in the league right now, or we're missing talking about him. So, your thoughts on Connor?
I don't know if he needs a guy from Colorado to motivate him. I think that he's super internally motivated. I think not being in the, not winning the scoring race or being in the MVP discussion, I think is a motivation. But I think mostly, one playoff run and 2 rounds, and so far in his career, I think that's the biggest motivation. I think he knows that how he's going to be judged at the end of his career is based on winning and cups, and so he doesn't want to be a really good player that doesn't win. I think that's what motivates him the most. I think in that, the first game he wasn't his normal self, especially defensively. He had some struggles, and he wasn't that great defensively in game 2. He didn't. I think that was his guy that didn't get picked up on the goal in front of the net. But you could just see that he was determined. He was gonna make things happen. The way that the ice seemed terrible. Like, the puck was bouncing around all over the place, and that seems like an advantage for him because he's was catching passes in the air with his stick and almost like dribbling the puck like a basketball as it was bouncing down the ice. I think he's unbelievable. And when I like when he seems a little pissed off, or he's just gonna say, I'm gonna take care of this myself, and you just see that extra little gear that he can get to it's a treat to watch.
100%.
Yeah,
go ahead, Dan.
First of all, for me, and this is just a plea for Oiler fans, we have to remember that everyone is watching us right now, and everybody knows that if they poke the beast, we come flying out and just are so angry anytime somebody would dare question the best player in the league. And every media guy that makes their little digs and their little comments, they're just doing it because they get clicks out of us. And just, I wish people would laugh about it, and then also just, respond with just faith in Connor. It's just, the guy, what, 3 nights before that tweet came out, he's scoring no-look goals like it's casual beer league Sunday night league at 11 p.m. And like and it's not to say that Rittich was trying hard or wasn't an exhibition game or whatever, but like we know how good Connor McDavid is. We know that he's the leader of this team. He's the lifeblood of this team. And as Connor goes, we go 90% of the time. So it's just we have to just try and kill this stuff with positivity, because it's going to keep happening. People are going to keep trolling other fans because we're super sensitive about our team, and we've seen the shit for a long time. And so when we finally get a chance at the playoffs, we're an easy target for just some guy that wants to get some retweets, and he got it, and he had some fun with it. And so it's just laugh it off and enjoy the highs. And you know what, Connor can take a night off every 3 games if he wants to. Like the guy is something special, and we have to remember that.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. I put a tweet out to exactly say that is, like these guys, they know. I mean, either they're lacking a little bit in creativity at that moment in time, or they need some clicks or some quota that they got to hit, but they know, let's go to the well. And they do it during regular season, and they'll do it more during the playoffs. But if you go to the well, which is, Oilers fans, and you go after Draisaitl or McDavid or anybody for that matter, they could go after Archibald and we'd all get up in arms. It's crazy. And I think it speaks to the passion we have for the team. You talk about the fans. Look at the 50-50 last night. Yeah. I don't know, Hart, if you're aware, it was a $1.5 million the winner got.
I saw, yeah. I wanted to get in on it, but I think you have to be in Alberta to win it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And that's the thing too, right, Michael? You said it right there. Like, as much as I'm saying, like, Oiler fans, calm down. Also, Oiler fans, don't stop being who you are. It's just that Oilers Twitter and Oilers fans are some of the funniest people in the world, because we've had so long to just hone our skills on ourselves that we can make the most fun out of this possible. It's just like, at the end of the day, maybe the Oilers don't win the Stanley Cup this year, maybe they do, but why not have fun with it both ways? Like, just laugh it up. Like, you just stir up the other fan base, you have some fun with it, and then we move on. But it's true. Edmonton fans, Calgary had 98,000 as their total pot. We hit 3.2 million. So yeah, it's something where there's something special in the water up here in Edmonton, and with Oiler fans all over the world.
Yeah, there certainly is. So guys, I've got to ask, we, there were a couple of changes that happened between game 1 and game 2. Some changes in terms of the way guys played, and like Athanasiou, I think was he wasn't necessarily rewarded on the score sheet, but he looked like a man on fire last night. And start maybe with Hart. Do you keep the lineup the same? You keep Archibald up on line 1? Any tweaks or changes, or you won a game and you keep it going?
Yeah, I think you keep the lines the same, although I think that line with Athanasiou and Cassian does deserve a little bit more ice time. Like, there's a lot of comments about how Athanasiou had his best game as an Oiler, but I think he played just on a shade under 10 minutes, right? So it's not like he's getting a lot of ice time. So I wouldn't mind seeing that line a little bit more. I guess a lot of it depends on the special teams. When you have that much penalty kill and even power play, it kind of messes up the lines a little bit. But yeah, I like the way the forwards looked. It's nice to see a little bit of push in the rest of the lines. One thing I was just thinking about, like, if you look at the trade deadline acquisitions of Ennis and Athanasiou, I don't think either of them are the best player on the team or anything, but if you compare that to who they replace, which are probably, like Haas and Nygaard, who are both, they can contribute and they can help, but they're not going to really have a huge impact on the game, I don't think, right? There's Nygaard and Haas are probably guys that, if they're kind of even or don't have a negative impact, that's probably what you hope for those guys. But you see Athanasiou, it seemed like he was driving play and was noticeable. Ennis scored and has actually been really, like, fierce on the forecheck and getting in there and creating plays. So a couple additions, and you just see the impact that it has on the depth that kind of pushes guys out. So now if you have some injuries, you're going to bring in guys like Nygaard and Haas that played a little bit or played during the year, and you kind of know that they're what you can expect from them, as opposed to, if you hadn't made those additions at the trade deadline and then someone got hurt, you'd be bringing in guys from the HL, like a Cooper Marody or someone. So it's good to see that the distribution throughout the lineup. Whereas most of the season, if Connor or Draisaitl didn't score, there were no goals happening.
Yeah, and 100% on that. Go ahead, then.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I would personally like to see just that same kind of game from Athanasiou. I'm fine with him being at 10 minutes if that's what it's going to take to kind of to keep him clicking at that high level that we want to see and that we know he's capable of. But yeah, Hart, like I said, we're just, this is a green podcast, but Ken Holland is, deserves full marks for pretty much everything he's done this season. Coming into a team, usually a GM, takes a year to get their feet underneath them and figure out what the team needs and stuff. But Holland has hit it right from the start, right from getting rid of Milan Lucic and that kind of distraction that the team had down to the deadline acquisitions. Mike Green doesn't pan out just because of COVID, and you know what? That's 2020. But yeah, you got Ennis, who's just been a consistent contributor, like Hart said, above replacement level that you need from a deadline acquisition, and then Athanasiou, who has just not really had a chance to show us what he's capable of, but you see glimmers of it and flashes of it, and hopefully that's something that can help us come round 2 or whatever the hell they're calling it now, and beyond. So yeah, it's I think back to the question from you there, Michael, is just you stay the course now. Mikko has the net until otherwise indicated, and we see what we can do as a team.
Yeah, this has really been rough tonight.
No, I disagree. No, you're wrong. You guys are wrong. We should change everything.
That's right. I think the only guy that I'm a little bit concerned about keeping in is maybe Kara, and it's been the same case all year. He's just not been the same player or the guy that I'd hoped he'd be. Or rather the guy that he can play like. Neil and Jason have really been running that line and been doing a great job, I think. And I think that's when you got those guys like Neil and Jason playing that type of a role and getting out there and doing what they did last night. That's the kind of recipe you need to go far, and maybe we'll see more out of Kara. I don't know that you change anything just yet, and certainly, we might have second guessed Tippett's pick for in between the pipes to start game 1, but certainly he's done a good job, putting this lineup together for a whole season and finding, who works well together and who doesn't. It really seems like this is a kind of like a shitty Oilers podcast because we should be more negative and stuff. but
we can be. Well, you mentioned goaltending. Like I wonder, looking back at game 1, right? Like, what does that do to the team when you get up 1-0 and then your goalie turns it over behind the net for like a tap in, right? Like, and the players are thinking like, oh boy, okay, I guess we have bad Mike Smith tonight. And you could see like they didn't have. They were really tight after that, and you wonder how that might change the game. I mean, it's impossible to have hindsight and figure that out, but to me, that was the wrong decision. Like, one goalie has better stats all year. He's not like young and inexperienced. He's 32 years old. He's a man, and I just don't get why. Well, I know he coached Mike Smith before, and many, many years ago, he had a good playoff run. He was okay for Calgary last year. But I found that to be a really big kind of unforced error. Like, put your best goalie in. If Koskinen didn't have a good game, okay, then maybe you go to Smith and see if he can get super hot like he did for a while there in January. But I guess we'll never know what would have happened in game 1. And, Koskinen wasn't amazing in game 2, but he was just solid. And, you look at a lot of the Mike Smith goals in game one and other games, and you think, well, that was a tough chance. That was a tough chance. That was a tough chance. But at some point, you need your NHL goalie to make some saves, and the save percentage, kind of doesn't lie. So the fact that Koskinen, there were no stinkers, and one more, if he let one less in, his save percentage would have been where it should be. So, and it was kind of a blowout. So you kind of give him that third goal. But I think that was a big mistake. And it'd be interesting to see now, assuming they win or have a long series or advance, like if Koskinen doesn't have some incredible games, is he going to get switched out again for Mike Smith because the coach wants to give him another chance? Like I just think we've seen enough from Mike Smith to know that, yes, he can potentially get hot, but it just doesn't seem worth the risk. Whereas you have a good sample size showing you that on any given day, Koskinen's the better bet.
Yeah, I think after game one, we'd be hard-pressed to see Smith come in unless if Koskinen loses the net now. I would have said that they'd be playing a two-goalie system if, Smith had a good game. But because of the way that, he was ousted, and I know that Tippett's trying to defend him, but you're right. I mean, there were just a couple of those, the giveaway, and then the one shot from the point, I think, that went over his shoulder. It's just a little too much to come back from, in my mind. Dan, your thoughts?
See, we finally have something we don't agree on necessarily. I mean, I should say that, like, on ON Radio, the ON Radio podcast, we did this prediction game. I think it was like 3 weeks before the actual playoffs, and we all said, I think, to a person that we want Mikko Koskinen to start. But I said, putting on my Dave Tippett hat, Mike Smith starting every time. Smith is just his guy. And sometimes, especially with this old guard of coaches, you have a guy you're comfortable with and a guy that you can just look down the locker room or look across the locker room at and say, you got this game and we're giving you the puck. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. If Smith comes out and plays lights out, you win game one, and you have Mikko Koskinen as your ace up the sleeve, as if and when, because I mean it's kind of just that way with Smith, that when he falters, you've got Mikko to take over for it. I like that. I just like that they started the veteran. And it's one of those things that I think it's good for Mikko Koskinen to just know that, I came in game one and I settled things down, and then I came out in game two and things were, like Hart said, it was solid, but not stellar. And we know that Koskinen can be stellar, and there was a couple of good saves there. I don't mind it. I understand that, sometimes logic doesn't always follow you with your heart. Not a pun there on heart or anything, but it's one of those things that you get it from a Tippett standpoint. At the end of the day, he has to be comfortable with the decision he makes, and so going with the guy he knows from years ago, and was the best player for the Calgary Flames last year in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, I guess because I have a website with math and numbers and stats. My bias. To me, it's like playing blackjack. Like, yeah, you could hit on 20, and you might hit it once in a while because you had a good feeling. But why don't you just do what gives you the best mathematical odds of winning, right? You got a pretty big sample size. One goalie is mathematically has stronger performance. Why not go with that guy? And if it doesn't work, okay, it didn't work. But at least I don't think the result dictates if it was the right decision. I think even if Smith was good, to me, it was still not the right decision, because you should start the goalie that gives you the best odds of winning and putting up a good performance. Now, if you're playing Koskinen and you got down in the series, or maybe in a future playoff series, you're kind of, let's say they advance and now they're playing Colorado and they're down 3-1 in a series or something with using Koskinen. Okay, what do you have to lose? Maybe Mike Smith does get super hot and it's worth gambling, but in a series, especially where you're the favorite, like, why not just go with the best odds?
I feel like a guy like Tippett and that cut of the clock. Again, I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just saying that this is, like, it made sense to me just because I know that this is the way that they operate. It's the way they have, for years. And the NHL is a circle. These coaches, they just keep getting recycled over and over again. And it's because at the end of the day, Tippett made that decision. And if Koskinen goes out as the starter and gets shelled, well, then Tippett can't say, well, hey, the spreadsheets told me, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that's right, but that's just kind of the way that he looks at it, right? Like, he knows that if he goes to that post-game press conference, he's defending Smith because he believed in Smith and he trusted Smith, as opposed to Mikko Koskinen comes in, he collapses, and then he's, thinking to himself, well, I should have started my veteran goaltender that I've known my whole life, kind of thing. Not necessarily right, but it's just kind of the way it is with these coaches these days.
So one of the things, and I didn't actually say this before, but I'm not surprised that Tippett started Smith, and I fully expected him to. And I'm on board with what you're saying, Dan. I think if you look at it last year, he was the only Calgary Flame that showed up in that series against Colorado, and he almost won every game for them. He gave them a shot. And Smith, we know, is a competitor, sometimes to his detriment, even. And so,
what do you guys think
hunch.
Mike Smith's playoff save percentage was last year?
That's the stats guy knows.
Good. I don't know it offhand.
No, I'm looking on a good site, puckpedia.com, where you can look it up. He had a 917 save percentage, 3.2 goals against. So. Did he play great? I don't know. That seems like okay. Certainly better than his.
If you've got a 917 though, if you've got a 917 with a 3.2 goals against, I'd say that's pretty good, right? Because that means that's quite a few shots, right? Like how many shots?
It's pretty good. It's not like a steal the series, stand on your head 940 or something like we've seen some goalies go on. So again, fine. Yeah, he played well last year. He's also a year older. Goalies aren't like wine; they don't get better with age.
Well, that was always my thing. That was my thing, or preseason or pre-playoff round with Blackhawk choosers. I did a podcast, the Area 51 podcast, and the Canucks broadcasters. It's a Canucks podcast, but they made comments about how Mike Smith is old, and it's like he's 38, and then they're like Crawford is amazing. He's 35. Like, what are we talking about here? I don't know. Like, these guys are. You're right, Hart. Like, don't get me wrong. When you're touching 38, 39, you're smelling 40. It's a different game for sure. But they're like, I don't know. It just, like I said, for me, it's just, I think everybody knows that Mikko Koskinen is the better goalie, but Smith has that ability to elevate when, with that competitive edge. Didn't happen. And that's great because Mikko Koskinen, I think, will be better for it just because he comes in and he knows, now it's my net and it's my net until I give it up.
Yeah.
And then that's just the way that, Smith has to also maintain his kind of his competitive edge on the bench right now and be there for the team.
I've talked
when I hear speculation like maybe they'll re-sign him for next year, it just makes my head want to explode off my body because it's like you got away with it. Okay, you made a bet on a 37-year-old goalie and he had a 902 save percentage, but it seemed somehow worked out where he was atrocious in some games and really good in others, and he was serviceable, but you got away with it. Like you didn't study for the test, but you went in and you did okay. But why do you have to do it again? Like, he'll be 39 during the next season. Like, I have no idea why. Just because he was okay this year, you should do it again. Where now it's going to be even riskier as he's closer to 40. It just that really concerns me.
Well, you're a money guy though, Hart, and I know you're a number guy, and you have to know that this off season is going to be the wacky season, right? Like, you're the only kind of deals that you're going to be getting. With any kind of consistency is going to be the person that you knew versus the one that wants, a big paycheck. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to look at that list and wonder how much more money you can pay for an upgrade on Smith. Not saying you're wrong again, I'm not, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's just, it's tough to keep dipping into a free agency well. where, guys want consistency and they want years on years instead of just a 1-year deal. So I don't know. To me, it's like if you bring back Smith and you sign him for just an absolutely bonus laden deal that has nothing to do with games played, because I absolutely despise that. But give him some, real performance based incentives that the league maybe doesn't, in the middle of another pandemic, prorate and make all that nonsense happen. But anyways, I digress. It's one of those wacky seasons we're heading into with free agency that every single hole I think that every team fills is going to be like a giant question mark. You're going to be like, I don't know if that's the right money. I don't know if that's the right term. I think we're heading into some dark times, and maybe you can dispel me of that fear, Hart.
Well, let's maybe switch gears a little bit here, and I think you're right on the thing. But you mentioned something that I know is near and dear to Hart's heart, which is the idea around prorating. It's watching tonight's game and watching Lucic score 2, although one was taken back, and on both of them he fanned on the puck. Neil, of course, has scored a couple now, right? And I guess the question, Hart, for you is, what's your thought on this league ruling that the Oilers deserve, or the Flames deserve, a 3rd-round pick for that trade?
I find it very, very, very strange. When, in the middle of the shutdown, there was talk that the league might have to rule on it. And at that point, again, you could have an opinion either way. He didn't actually score 21 goals, so, the rule's the rule. Or maybe there needs to be some compromise worked out. And to me, that at that point is just personal opinion. But the part where it kind of shifted for me is when the NHL and NHLPA memorandum of understanding came out. Basically, the new CBA came out, and there's a whole they call it attachment, basically an appendix, all about how to deal with the transition and the partial year and everything. And there's no place where it talks about prorating stats. There's a few sections where it talks about prorating, and that's all related to games played. So it says, for certain thresholds are based on games played, like, when you're eligible for waivers and arbitration and free agency and expansion, all that stuff. There was a bunch of rules that all the thresholds will be prorated 70 out of 82, and some of the amounts that you have to hit, those games played thresholds will be prorated. And then when you get to the performance bonus section, which to me I think is the most relevant because it kind of covers a similar topic, it specifically says do not prorate stats. It says that prorate. So some of the threshold, some of the performance bonuses are based. You have to have a certain number of games played to qualify. 42 games for, like, Gaetan Haas, for example. He got a performance bonus for finishing in the top 3 forwards plus minus. But to be part of that calculation, you have to have 42 games played or more. And the players you're compared against have to have 42 games played. So the MOU talked about, okay, we'll prorate that 42 games played threshold, like the qualifying thresholds of games. It says prorate that, but it specifically says do not prorate the stats. So, most forwards on entry-level deals, they'll get a performance bonus if they hit 20 goals. It says, like, if they got 19 goals, they don't get the bonus because they didn't have 20 goals. So when you go from the summer, like earlier, where it was kind of an opinion what would be the right or fair thing, but now you go to where the NHL and NHLPA have a document that gives the methodology about how to treat things like stats and prorating and how to treat things that happened at the shutdown, where you have a whole bunch of examples where it says, do not prorate stats. It just seems very baffling to me that you're not going to prorate stats, but for any other purpose except for this trade, we're going to prorate stats and just assume that he would have scored 2 more goals. Meanwhile, the guy was injured and hadn't scored, I think, in 2020 before the shutdown. So again, it's just super inconsistent to me. Like, I think there was a bit of a precedent in that MOU about how to treat stats and prorating them, and that wasn't followed. My understanding in talking to some people with teams is that each team, for all the trade conditions and everything, they got to submit a 2-page legal brief with their arguments for whatever they were hoping to accomplish. And I guess it sounds like the Oilers were basically saying, we shouldn't give Calgary anything whatsoever. Like, he didn't qualify. Now, I don't know if they cited what I'm bringing up, like the kind of precedent in the MOU or not, but they said like no, and there was some suggestion, I guess, to Ken Holland. Well, maybe you should propose in your legal brief, like, how about a 5th round pick or something, just as like a compromise. And he was like adamant that no, they shouldn't get anything. So I think he's probably fell out of his chair, just like we all did when it was announced it's a 3rd round pick. And so, yeah, they'll let him defer it for 1 year. Like, okay, I guess it's better than a kick in the pants, but it doesn't change the fact that they're giving up a 3rd round pick. And again, when you look at the other trades that they ruled on, I didn't see any other cases where they prorated someone's stats to qualify for the trade conditions. So I'll just finish my rant by saying it's just interesting too. The Oilers lost a 3rd round pick here, and they certainly gave up the most compensation in the like 3-month era where teams had to give up compensation for hiring fired coaches and GMs, where they gave up a 2nd and a 3rd round pick to hire Trelli and McClellan. So because of these weird kind of decisions and interpretations by the NHL, the Oilers now have lost a 2nd round pick and 2 3rd round picks. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I think they need you to start writing the briefs for them, maybe. So, Dan, is there anything you could say, either pro or to the contrary, that Harder missed in all of that, or Hart missed in all of that?
Harder, I like it. That's a very Hartsy. It's a very NHL kind of nickname.
That's right.
I don't know, like Hart, you kind of threw in the last 2 ones there. Part of me, like the Oiler fan in me, says, yeah, 100% that it's so goofy that they then removed the rule on the McClellan and the Chiarelli picks and still didn't erase the Oilers stuff. But at the same time, like, what were the Oilers thinking? You know, like, they knew the rule existed and they still went ahead and did it when they could have just waited and maybe petitioned the league. I don't know, gone to a board of governors meeting and said that this is dumb to have this rule there. But this one, it's like, you know, nothing else I can't say that Harder hasn't already said. Harder, that's a new thing now. But you know, it's just it's a very strange thing. If I'm an agent and I'm going into, you know, had any kind of bonus that was maybe close to the number, like Hart said, you know, yeah, sure, the paperwork says that you don't prorate stats, but you did prorate stats in this case, so why not me too? And see what happens. You know, again, throw some spaghetti up at the wall and see what sticks. Because if the league wants to make it up as they go, you might as well take advantage and go to the bank with it. So yeah, it's one of those things that the league, again, you know, makes itself look a little silly in its ability to carry out its own rules. But you know, let's just add it to the list of many things that we can hold over the league's head when we're holding the Stanley Cup over our head too.
Well, and there was some talk. I don't know if it was in the Flames press release or just some of the media saying, well, it's trying to capture the spirit of the deal. So the spirit of the deal was if you only scored 19 goals and hadn't scored in a couple months, that they would still give up a 3rd round pick. Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't know what that means. The spirit of the deal. Like, he either scored 21 or he didn't.
The Flames media is a bunch of water carrying. I don't want to call out too many people, but it is just, you know, you know, I get it. You know, like if it had gone the Oilers' way, Oilers media would have said the same kind of stuff. I guess they could have said, you know, well, the rule of law says that the stats had to be 20, 21 goals and then 10 more than Milan. But you know, it's just like I said, it's just another brick in the wall, and we're gonna smash through that wall, and we're going to have that to hold over the league for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, because we need more.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need way more. Hey guys, we're coming down to the end of the hour, and you know, I want to talk about a couple of things just quickly before we go, and while I've got you guys on the podcast. First off, Hart, I haven't had you on the podcast for quite a while. Lots of changes over at Puckpedia. Give me some of the big things that have happened, anything that's upcoming, you know, anything you want to share about Puckpedia that's brand new.
Sure. Well, the biggest feature that's been released the last while is our My Puckpedia GM mode. And this is something that I recommend for Dan to use to look at goalie options this summer or this free agents period. But it basically allows people to have their own personal version of the website, of a salary cap website. So you sign up for a My Puckpedia account and you click the button to turn on the My Puckpedia GM mode, and you're now out of the real Puckpedia site and you're in your own personal version. And so you can make trades and signings, call guys up and down. And it's, as opposed to just being able to see what one trade looks like, this allows you to manage the rosters of every team all at the same time. And for every deal you make, you can go and see what that does to every team's roster and salary cap situation. So as we start to move through this playoff period and teams are getting eliminated or just on off days trying to occupy yourself with daydreaming about what moves might be made, I think it's a fun tool to go on there and sign Bear to an extension and sign Athanasiou and then see what your goalie UFA options are for the Oilers. I think that was a big addition to the site to really make it more interactive. And one of the things I liked having the site, sometimes media people would ask me for my opinions on how much cap space would teams have if they did certain signings, and I kind of had a personal version where I could use as a sandbox to make moves, and now everyone has an opportunity to do it for themselves.
It's awesome. And for those of you that haven't been to puckpedia.com, I suggest you go there. There's a lot of great hockey sites out there, but what I love about your site, Hart, is everything's there that I could possibly want come game day. I actually have it open pretty much for every podcast that I do. So, as you know, I've referenced it lots on the podcast, and I'm a big fan, and thanks for putting that together. Keep doing what you're doing, Dan. So of course, Oilers Nation. I've got to say thanks to Oilers Nation. They made some donations for the Oilers Live Cup, which we had almost the very last game before the pandemic hit on February 29th. And so, a big supporter of you guys. You've done a great job. I know you look after everybody in the community and are doing a lot of things. You also do, as part of that, hockeyfights.com. It's again, and happy to have you guys on here because these are two of my favorite sites, Puckpedia and Hockey Fights. Anything new with Hockey Fights? What's the best way, in your opinion, that for us, lovers of the more pugilistic aspects of the game? Mm-hmm. Tell me something about hockeyfights.com.
Well, as I think everybody can kind of understand and accept that the world of fighting has changed, and I think for the better. You're not seeing as many fights that are unrequested or unagreed upon. The old muggings of old are gone, but they'll always have a home on hockeyfights.com, and I always do truly feel that we try to give a place for people to pay their respect to the people that went before them, in the sense that there's some guys that gave up a lot to be able to play the game of hockey that we all love to watch, it's important to always have that memory there. Hockeyfights.com is going to kind of go through probably some big changes here in the future that we're working on and have been working on for a while. Just kind of trying to make sure that we're always going to be the archive for hockey fighting. And, as the world continues to change and we continue to adapt, you'll see new features come up on hockeyfights.com that gives you a reason to keep coming back all the time. So that's just kind of, that's the news that is the news. We're pleasantly surprised that bubble hockey has included a lot of fighting and a lot of kind of anger and frustration. Like you look at the Flames and the Jets series, there's been quite a bit of vitriol spewed between the two teams, so it's been fun to watch. So yeah, keep checking in there. And then at OilersNation.com, just a quick thing that life has changed. For those of your listeners that don't know, I'm the game day host, I guess, for Oilers Nation. So I host our watch parties host our trips to Vegas, Calgary, all that good stuff. And so, of course, that has changed with COVID. And so we've shifted over to twitch.com or twitch.tv, I guess. And so if you're looking for something to do while you're maybe watching the game from home, feel free to join us on Twitch at twitch.tv/official Oilers Nation, or just search up official Oilers Nation on Twitch, and just join in chatting with 50, 60 Oiler fans. We're just trying to encourage people to, social distance for sure. And then if you're going to go out and watch the game somewhere, you don't have to have a bunch of people around you talking to you, because you have the room of chat in your hand. So have your listeners feel free to check in and let me know that you heard about me on this podcast.
You bet. Yeah, and it's great. I didn't. I've been moving the TV out to the patio and watching out there, and I've had a couple people over in the back to watch the games, but definitely. I'm sure one of these games I'm going to tune in on Twitch there, and what a great thing you're doing there. Thanks again, guys, for joining me. I always find, I'm of mixed mind on this, which is, I'm a huge Oilers fan, and so I love a good Oilers win. The podcast, you don't have as much to talk about when there's not as much negative to talk about, right? And it's good and bad, right? I mean, you want to have reasons to chat and have a good time and talk hockey. But it's we've had close to 14 years of good podcast material to kind of keep us going, and so it's good to have one of these nights where we can all sit and agree and talk and do that. And you know what, guys? It's great interacting with you. I loved having you on the show today. Hope to get you back. Maybe in a later round. Let's knock on wood on that one.
There you go.
Yeah. No, great and good job providing content to all of us Oiler fans out there. So that's it for tonight. Yeah, thanks, guys. That's Michael from Oilers Live. I'll have these guys back, as I said. Hopefully they'll accept my invitation. Go check out twitch.tv and just search for Oilers Nation, hockeyfights.com, oilersnation.com, and puckpedia.com. Have a great night, guys.